Hello again, my lovelies. Here I am for video number 3, really 2. Um, I like to tell this story because it grabs people's attention. Okay. And some of you may have a dramatic moment where you found out your mom was narcissistic. Or you may not. It may be just an ongoing thing and you've realized, she's just she or my father or whatever, they're just jerks to me. They insult me constantly or I was neglected. Because that's part of it too. Some narcissists are hovering, some are neglectful, and you become their caregiver instead of them taking care of you. Well, I had a big holy crap, holy crap, and oh my god, my life is different. It's over. I'm not me anymore moment. I have to tell you a little bit about my past and then go into the story. Um I am an only child. I went to Catholic school my entire life. My parents, whenever I asked, "Hey, how did you guys meet?" Um, they're from Cuba, and the story I was told was that they had met in Cuba physically and then had both gotten visas to come separately to the United States and got married here, actually in New York. I don't live in New York anymore. So and in a church, St. Elizabeth's, and I always wondered why there were no pictures of this wedding, but there weren't. And there's an explanation for that, of course. So um that's the story I know, right? My mother always said she was a virgin when she married my dad, that she'd never been with anybody else. So this was my background, was this perfect history, right? The perfect persona, perfect mask. And when I was 42, I just turned 45, so about 2.5 years ago. It's going to be 3 years this year in a couple of months. Not to drag out the story, but I was sitting down and with my husband watching TV, and I got a phone call from Puerto Rico, and I happen to not currently know anybody in Puerto Rico. So I ignored the call, just think it was a wrong phone number, and I got a text, and the first line is so and so your father? And I knew right then and there what the last sentence was going to be in that text, that conversation. Funny enough, I don't know if it's a premonition. As empaths, daughters and sons of narcissistic parents, we can pick up on things and not know why. And I think that's what had happened to me. I kind of knew that I wasn't alone in this world as a child, that I had a sibling, is what I thought, male sibling. And just a few months before, I had actually asked my mother if I had a brother somewhere. And she looked me right in the face, in the eyes, just like I'm looking at you, and called me crazy. And that is called gaslighting at its finest. Calling me crazy for asking her something that was absolutely the truth. The end of the texts from Puerto Rico was, "You are my sister." I was already crying because I already knew that that was the case, that that was going to be the end. Um, as it turns out, I'm not just the younger sister of one brother, but the younger sister of 3 brothers. Um, that night, I called my mom immediately, of course, because why wouldn't I, right? Everybody would call their mom. Mommy, is this true? Is this right? And her first reaction was, what do you know? And when I said, oh no, at that moment I realized there was no way in hell I was going to tell her what I knew or what I had heard from my brother, but that she had to tell me what the truth, right? When I said, I don't know, or not, I don't know, I said to her, no, you have to tell me. She told me, well, that's nothing. Your dad was married twice before me. He came to this country married to another woman and had one kid with her. And then he married another woman and had two kids with her. Oh my God. My whole world just changed. Just toppled over. Everything I knew about my parents changed in that one moment. And the attitude that came with it, and the things that I started to unfold from that knowledge, right? I will say something to you. As it is right now, all it is knowledge, right? That my parents lied, that I have 3 older brothers. It's just knowledge because I am still who I am. It didn't change the fact that I'm a married woman. I have a 17-year-old daughter. At the time, she was, 15? None of that information has changed. My life really didn't change that day. It was knowledge that changed. But I was so confused. I was inconsolable. As it turns out, the truth, and this I found out through my brothers, slowly uncovering like I say, peeling the onion back. It was just layers and layers and layers of lies to cover up more lies, to cover up more lies, to cover up more lies. That my mother and father actually met a year before, because the story is that they got married and then it took my mother 9 months to get pregnant with me. So I always calculated their anniversary wrong for all these years. That's the first thing that came to mind. I don't know why it's silly, but I'm like, every card I ever gave you for an anniversary had the wrong year on it, because it's really only 1 year more than my age, not 9, as I had been calculating. So, and my name has to do with it, but I'd have to explain more. It's in Spanish. Millie is short for my name, and my name has to do with the 9 years, but that never happened. She got pregnant within a few months. So as it turns out, my mom met my dad because she became friends with my dad's wife. So my brother's mother was her friend, and that's how she met my dad. They lived across the street from each other in the neighborhood where I just happened to grow up as a teenager. They moved me from Queens to Washington Heights. If any of you are from New York, you may know it's Upper Manhattan, close to the Bronx. And this is the scene of the crime. Okay, that's where they met. And my cousin, the one that I mentioned was narcissistic as well, he was somehow involved. But my aunt and my uncle and my cousin lived across the street from my mother's friend and my father and one kid. I think my dad never actually met the other one. I don't know the exact details, but I know that my dad left the woman, literally walked across the street to my mother, and I don't know what happened. I know they moved to Brooklyn. I know they did get married the year before I was born, but they did not get married by the church because my mother made a big freaking deal about that shit. You want to talk about making you feel bad? I was married and got divorced to just a guy who was wrong for me. I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm not gonna involve him in this at all. And I didn't get remarried in the Catholic Church. It just didn't feel like it. I need some guy with a nice robe to say it's okay. I got remarried, uh, just someone who had, who could marry us. She officiated, and I've been married 12 years to this wonderful man who saw my mother's bullshit almost immediately, because the joke is he's kind of a psychopath. A good psychopath, though. He's on my side and has always been very supportive. It's a joke with us. But my mother made a big deal and said, "You're not married to your new husband in the eyes of God." Really, my God knows better. And I've always felt that in my heart. It didn't matter that she said that. But ironically, she never got married in the Catholic Church. So she's never been married in the eyes of God. So I told her that. I threw that back in her face right when I was at in a place where I was between contact and no contact. So kind of a low contact situation. And my anger was so great that I had to ask her that question. And she said to me that she was in fact not married to my father in the eyes of God. So she won't give in. She did not give in. That's an example of how narcissists are. They don't give in to wrongdoing. She used it against me, and she wouldn't give in and say, yes, it doesn't matter. You were right about that. Nope. She didn't give in. So, as it turns out, I found out as well that my mother had been married before. I never did a simple calculation in my head, but she came from Cuba way older than she said. She said she was 22, she was 28. In the 50s, in the late 50s, when this would have been happening, or late 60s, sorry. She would have, in this small town in Cuba that she was from, she would have been married. She would have kids. So there's a good chance that there are other children out there, which I don't need to know about. I already did my DNA test and I didn't find anything. So I'm hoping that if I have a sibling, that they don't decide to do a DNA test. So because I really don't need the complication, I really don't care anymore. But when I tried to investigate a little bit more, she made sure that I could not find out the truth. If I contacted someone, those Citibank people that she worked with in that perfect job in the 60s and 70s, if I contacted one of those people, I wouldn't hear back from them for hours or days. And then when I did, I heard the same exact story. The same exact story. That my mother was married because she came through Mexico by proxy to this man so that he could come to the United States. Okay, is that even a thing? I don't know. If any of you have Cuban backgrounds or Hispanic and know of a marriage that happened by proxy, that means the other person wasn't there to get married, can you please put that in the comments? Because I'd love to know. I've looked it up and I can't find it. So apparently she was married by proxy to this man and there was no relationship. But that is a load of bull. My mother's best friend, her whole life, that I've, my whole life, is actually her ex-sister-in-law. It's the guy she married sister. So, there was so many lies, so much stuff that just kept coming out. And I know there's so much more I don't know. Now, yes, my father is the one that gave me the 3 brothers, and he is the one who abandoned 3 children and stayed with my mother because she was the strongest narcissist of the 3 women. That is my best guess. I had to come to terms with the fact that my perfect father, whom I was always told was perfect, was a guy who would abandon 3 children. That's a hard thing for me because how could he be that guy that abandons kids? How could he be that person? Um, I currently don't have much of a relationship with either of them. I've met all three. That's a long story. I haven't met all three. The guy who called me, he lives in Puerto Rico, and I haven't met him. I met his younger brother that never met my father, and I met the oldest one from marriage number one. Can you keep track of this? Father married one woman in Cuba, came with her through Spain, had a boy. This is the oldest son. They divorced for whatever reason. I'm hearing it's her fault. I don't know. Doesn't matter. They divorced. He married this other woman and had 2 kids with her, and those are the oldest of those two is the one that called me. The oldest of all of them from the first marriage, my dad's first marriage, and the one that he came from Cuba with, I had to look for him. It took me a year and a half, and I found him, and we just happened to be going to Connecticut to have Thanksgiving, surprise my sister-in-law, my husband's sister, and he lives in Massachusetts, so we met him. He's actually at the airport, which was very nice, but we have not kept in touch. There's other issues there. It's very difficult to start a relationship with your baby sister who's in her 40s and your big brothers who are all in their 50s. That's just not a relationship that can grow very easily. Okay, so this wasn't a fun video, but I wanted you guys to really, really see what kind of crap I went through. Okay, now by this time, I already knew my mother was a narcissist. I just hadn't accepted it. And that knowledge, which changed who I thought I was for a long time, it was the center story of my life for a long time, is what forced me to accept that this woman was just a horrible person. And I know that some of you may be confused, but your dad's the one that didn't know. She orchestrated him not having contact with these kids because she knew my oldest brother's nickname. And why would she know that? Because when she met him, he was still in contact with him. That's, and I know that he was in contact with the one that called me. So she orchestrated him not having contact with them. When I was 3 months old, they moved to Queens from Brooklyn. If you guys know New York, these are 2 boroughs outside of New York City. But in the 70s, that might as well have been New York to Siberia. There was no Google or internet, and they always paid, and I always wondered why, to not have their phone number in the phone book. So, yes, my mother was behind everything. And when they moved to Queens, those people they met in Queens didn't know any of this. But she told me that they knew. And when I talked to one person, they were like, we had no idea. So she made me feel like I was the only one who didn't know, and that wasn't the case at all. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you my story because it's a big one. So if this is entertaining to you, great. Please subscribe, like, and comment. And please, if you know about those by proxy marriages, let me know. It's important to me. I just need to know that, if that's even a possibility or if that lie is just way out there. And I'm sending you my peace, my love, my safety, and I'll see you next time.